Welcome to my kitchen in Dallas, Texas. I'm Chef Jennifer Basil. We are making Italian food, and for today we're going to do dinner and dessert. We are going to start with an orecchiette with broccoli rabe and some Italian sausage. So the first thing we want to do, I've got some water boiling. We want to blanch our broccoli rabe. If you're not familiar with this, it is a little bit of a bitter leaf. First thing we want to do is blanch it. We're going to put it in some boiling water, and what this does is it actually brings out the chlorophyll as well as cooking it just a little bit. I don't want to fully cook it, so we're just going to keep it in the water long enough till those bright green colors come out. Because when we put it in our pan sauce for our pasta dish, it's going to cook a little bit further. So we're not really trying to cook this. And just like that, very quick, because this is a leafy vegetable. You can see though it kind of has the broccoli floret similar to like a broccolini or baby broccoli. And sometimes when you blanch, you would put this in ice water when you're done. But like I said, we're going to continue to cook this, so I'm not worried about stopping the cooking process right now. So we're just going to take this out of our water. I'm going to bring the temperature up so that this water is ready for our pasta. Now our pasta is called orecchiette, and orecchiette means small ears, and this pasta is named for its shape because it looks like little small ears. So this is the type of pasta. It's going to be great when we put the sausage in and our pecorino romano, because this is going to all come together and make a nice sauce, and those little cups will kind of get all those flavors together and combined. So let's get the rest of that out of the water. We'll get our pasta started, and then we'll move on to the pan sauce. Okay, I've removed the broccoli rabe. We brought the water back up to a boil. I'm going to use the same pan. I'll tell you why, for two reasons. One, who wants to do more dishes? But also, there's a little bit of that broccoli rabe flavoring in that, and pasta absorbs the flavor of the water it cooks in. So that's why we salt the water, is to give the pasta some flavor. If we were to throw basil or oregano, pasta would pick up those flavors as it absorbs that water. So just an idea, if you want to kind of mix up your pasta flavors, you can actually throw herbs, lemon, things like that, garlic in your water to help season the pasta. So we're gonna put this in, and this is a fresh pasta, so it's not gonna take that long, maybe 4 minutes. So while that's doing its thing, and I always stir it just a little bit once I get it in the water, and make sure you have a big pot of water. Sometimes people are like, don't you put oil in the water to cook pasta? No, you don't, because that will stop the absorption of the water into the pasta. The key to not having your pasta stick is to make sure that your water is to a full rolling boil, and to make sure that you have a good large amount of water to hold the amount of pasta you're putting in the water. So I just give it a little stir. Make sure those aren't sticking. I'm going to keep the top off. It'll come back up to a boil, because whenever you put food in water, it kind of lowers the temperature. And we're going to let that cook. I've got my pan already started to heat. Now we have to cook our sausage. This is a handmade Italian sweet sausage. You could use a hot sausage, but I chose sweet Italian sausage because there's a little bit of bitterness to the broccoli rabe, and I think that the sweet will balance out that bitter flavor. So let's put some good olive oil in, because quality ingredients are key when cooking Italian. And you can already see that we don't have to wait for that oil to heat up. The pan was hot enough. Now when I do sausage, you start kind of like on a medium high, right? Because you want to get it browned on the outside. But you don't want to keep it that hot, because what happens? The outside burns and the inside doesn't cook. So we're just going to get the outside browned. And then I'm going to turn that temperature down and let it cook with the cover on, so it cooks through the inside. Love the sound of that sizzle in the morning. You can see it's already starting to brown. So this will take probably about 5 to 7 minutes. You don't necessarily have to cook the sausage all the way through. I would say most of the way through, maybe 3/4 of the way. Once it's mostly cooked, we're going to slice it to add it to our dish. Okay, our pasta's ready. Our sausage is ready. Now, you can see that my sausage kind of popped open. One thing I didn't do is kind of poke it with a fork. If you do that before you try to brown it and cook it, it'll keep it from splitting open like that because it kind of allows some of that fat and moisture that's inside the sausage to come out without exploding the casing. But since we're chopping this up anyway, it's not a big deal. So let's take that out of the pan. I turned my temperature down to low because we are now going to add some garlic, and I don't want this garlic to burn. You know, normally I would have like something else in the pan, but that's not always possible if you don't have other ingredients in your dish. So I turned it to low so this wouldn't burn. We're gonna get that going. I have some anchovies. We're gonna put these in and let them kind of cook down, and they're almost gonna kind of melt. You don't need to chop them. They're so thin that they'll almost kind of disintegrate into our sauce. So we're just gonna kind of keep that in until that happens. And then next, we are going to add pecorino, some crushed red pepper, some salt and pepper, and some pasta water. And that's gonna create the base for our sauce. While that is doing its thing, why don't we go ahead and chop up our sausage. So that's ready. It's a quick dish once these two components are done. You've got kind of everything set up. The other thing you could do too is you could always remove the sausage from the casing if you wanted to make it more like a ground sausage dish. You would do that before you actually browned the sausage. This is a really pretty knife, but it's actually really great too. It kind of looks like a machete almost. A friend of mine who owns a knife company, the Fine Knife Company, makes these, and he did a really beautiful job. He put my logo on one side and Getting Saucy TV on the other, he engraved it. I thought that was like super cool. But it's a really great knife. You always want to make sure your knives are sharp because when they're dull, obviously they won't work as well, but you could also cut yourself more easily. Okay, so those anchovies are breaking down. Let's add a little pasta water. And that kind of deglazes the pan too by adding a liquid. You can see, ooh, look at the brown bits from the sausage come right up off the pan. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more. Let's add our cheese. This is pecorino romano. It's a little bit different flavor than Parmigiano. And we'll bring that together. Let's add our crushed red pepper. And here's how simple this dish comes together. Once this has kind of melted, you can see the cheese is coming together. It's creating a nice creamy sauce. We'll add our broccoli rabe back in. We'll add our sausage. And since we're using pasta water to kind of create this creamy sauce and thicken it because there's starch in the water, which is what creates that thickening portion, I'm just gonna take the pasta straight from the water. Mix a little bit of salt and pepper to season. Y'all, chef, you do it from up high. Actually, do you know why chefs do their salt and pepper from up here? Because you can get a more even, if you're down here, it doesn't like spread out as evenly, so that's why we hold it up. It's not just to be fancy. And we'll mix that together, and dinner served. All right, our dinner is ready. Orecchietti with broccoli rabe and Italian sausage. Look at how pretty that broccoli rabe is, that bright green. You could certainly serve this in a big bowl family style. I'm gonna do an individual plate here because I like things pretty. And to finish this, let's shave a little bit more pecorino on it because, well, why not? Cheese is awesome. Now, because this has sausage in it, you could do a white Italian wine. You know me, I love my red, so I'm gonna do like a Chianti, which is a little bit lighter bodied, would go beautiful with this because of that sweet sausage in there. So that's our orecchietti with broccoli rabe and sweet Italian sausage. Let's move on to our second recipe. We are gonna do cookies. So if you've been following me this season, we've done a lot of pastries, and Italians are known for their pastries, but they're also known for cookies. And quite frankly, since I'm not a baker, these are much easier recipes than the pastries. So we're gonna start with Italian anisette cookies. Now, I looked up, because you know I'm not fluent in Italian, on how to pronounce anise. In Europe they say anise, in America they say anise. I prefer to say anise, I think it sounds prettier. So these kind of have that flavor of anise. And anise, I hate to say licorice, that's probably the closest thing you can think of, but it's not really like a licorice, like a black licorice flavor. It's a little bit lighter. If you've ever had ouzo from Greek, the cordial, it kind of tastes like that. If you've had fennel, anise is from fennel, so it's got that kind of same flavor. We're gonna start, like all baking recipes, we're gonna cream our butter and sugar. You can do this in a mixing bowl, you can do it in a countertop mixing bowl with your hand mixer. I think if you wanted to stir it, you could, but a mechanical device like a stand mixer or hand mixer is gonna give you a better fluff, which is gonna make your cookies lighter and fluffier. So we're gonna get those two creamed together. I was gonna say, ooh, technical difficulties. So probably on low to medium speed, not too high because you don't want your sugar to fly out. While that's going on, let's take our baking powder, which also gives some rise to the cookies, and our salt. And I didn't grab a whisk, but I can use the other hand of my spatula, and we'll just mix those together. Now that this is light and fluffy, let's add in our extract. So I've got the anise extract. I like to add some vanilla. I love vanilla in any of my baking, whether normal recipes call for it or not. Just make sure you don't use too much so it doesn't overpower the anise, because you really want that anise flavor to come out. Now we'll add the eggs one at a time. Make sure they're well incorporated. And if you need to, stop and scrape down your mixer. Do that. And something interesting I learned about the stand mixers, if it comes like you're finding that it's not reaching the bottom of the bowl, you actually can adjust these. I had no idea, but I looked it up because sometimes that happens, over time it changes, moves or becomes uncalibrated. So you actually can, there's a screw on the back here that you can actually adjust it so that your bowl lifts higher, which I thought was really something cool to learn. We'll add our other egg. And then here comes my favorite part, it's when we put the flour in, and yes, I wore a black dress, so. Who's taking bets on how much flour I get on myself? Make sure it's well combined. Now I'm gonna turn it down and carefully add this flour. And we'll just add it a little bit at a time, kind of let it incorporate so it doesn't clump all up. Remember, this is a cookie dough, so it's gonna be a stiffer dough than like a cake batter. I can smell the anise. Such a great flavor. It smells so good. Okay, when that comes together, we're gonna go over to our oven and we will kind of scoop out the cookies, get them in the oven so we can get them out and decorate them. And we'll have our dessert to go with our dinner. I have preheated our oven to 350 degrees, and you want to make sure that that's already at temperature before you put your cookies in. I have a scoop. You can find these nowadays in any store that sells baking goods, and they come in different sizes based on ounces. So I like to use this, but you certainly could use a teaspoon as well. These are just drop cookies. So the other way you can do these, if you wanted them a little bit more perfect, would be to take them, you could roll them into a ball and kind of press them down a little bit if you want to, really perfectly cook. I'll leave those two so we can see the difference. And if you don't have one of those scoops, just use a tablespoon. The key is trying to get them all about the same size so they're uniform. Are you a fan of raw cookie dough? They say not to eat raw cookie dough because of the raw eggs in it. I do, and I've never gotten sick. I'm not advocating it though. But I also try to get my eggs from a local farmer who I know pasture raised the chickens and they're not eating commercially raised grain. I love those commercials that say, vegetarian fed. Well, chickens aren't vegetarians. They're supposed to eat like worms and stuff out of the yard. I prefer using organic, pasture raised, non-GMO, the way we farmed before factories got involved. when food was real and whole and not doctored. Back then they didn't even put eggs in the refrigerator. And these go in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes, depending on, all ovens, just because it says 350 doesn't mean it's 350. You know your personal oven and how it cooks. So I would say 10 minutes, then kind of keep an eye on them. Once they're done, we're gonna let them cool. We're gonna make a glaze so that we can put like a pretty sugar glaze on it and some sprinkles when we take these out of the oven. Okay, our cookies are in the oven, so why don't we put together the glaze that's going to go on top. I've got some milk. I've got the same flavorings we used in the cookies, so the anise and the vanilla and powdered sugar. What you're trying to do is get kind of a thick consistency. So, depending on how much milk you use, a couple tablespoons to an eighth or a quarter of a cup, you're gonna add quite a bit of powdered sugar to make a nice thick consistency. Kind of see how that's coming together. And then we'll add in our flavoring. I'm gonna use just a dash. This is a little thicker, so there's a difference between vanilla extract and vanilla paste. The difference is the amount of alcohol that they mix in. So vanilla paste is just the scraped vanilla seeds. Vanilla extract has alcohol added into it to give it a more watery consistency. They are interchangeable. 1 teaspoon in one recipe of paste is the same as 1 teaspoon of extract. So they're interchangeable, but you can see the vanilla bean in the paste a little bit more than you would in extract. So that's a nice thick glaze. Once the cookies are done, we're gonna take them out of the oven. You do need to let them cool before you put this on, or it's just gonna melt right off of them. So as soon as they're cooled, we'll come back and we'll get them decorated. Okay, you can see our cookies came out. These were kind of the ones that are a little bit more rustic, rough shaped. And then these were the shaped ones that I did. I pulled some aside and kind of put them in the refrigerator to cool just for time's sake, because otherwise we'd be waiting like 30 minutes for these to cool. Let's get some glaze on them. I'm gonna do these first and then we'll put the topping one on. So you do wanna make sure these are cool, but just add some glaze to them. If you have a sweet tooth, these are gonna be perfect. And then typically in Italy, they would put sprinkles on these to kind of make them decorative and festive. I was hoping I had red sprinkles or multicolored, but I've got some gold, I've got some green, I've got some silver. So whatever you have, whatever colors fancy you, if you want to do those multicolored sprinkles that kind of look more like this, you can. But I don't know, let's do some silver and gold. Whatever you want to do for your dinner party or your kids. These would be pretty for an anniversary party. My birthday's on St. Patrick's Day, so let's just add a pop of green. And let's do a top one so we have a pretty display, because you know me, I like things fancy and pretty. And there you have our Italian anisette cookies. What fun were today's recipes, and if you made a bet, somehow I did get something on my black dress while we were baking. Anyway, for our 2 recipes that we did today, the orecchiette pasta and the anisette cookies, you'll find those recipes on my website, jenniferbasil.com, and links to my social media as well. Ciao.